Imagine waking up one day and your entire city has a different name. Not because of war, not because of conquest, but because some politicians thought it would be a good idea. That's exactly what happened to these 5 cities, and honestly, the consequences were absolutely insane. So here's the thing about changing a city's name. You'd think it's just words on a map, right? But when you've got millions of people, billions of dollars in infrastructure, and an entire identity built around one name, changing it becomes this massive domino effect that nobody saw coming. And the craziest part? Most of these cities are still dealing with the fallout decades later. Let's start with Bombay, or should I say Mumbai, because yeah, that's exactly the problem. In 1995, the Indian government decided to officially change the name from Bombay to Mumbai, and they had their reasons. They wanted to remove the colonial British influence and return to the original Marathi name. Sounds noble, sure. But here is what they did not account for. Bombay was not just a name, it was a brand. The Bombay Stock Exchange, one of Asia's oldest stock markets, suddenly had an identity crisis. Companies registered as Bombay something had to decide whether to rebrand entirely or keep the old name and confuse everyone. That split forced businesses into awkward choices about logos, legal names, and customer recognition, and it created long-lasting identity problems. Even today, almost 30 years later, people still call it Bombay. The airport code is still BOM. The High Court is still called the Bombay High Court because changing legal documents that go back centuries is a nightmare nobody wants to touch. The name change cost the government $170 million in administrative expenses. New signs, new letterheads, new everything. And the kicker is international investors, tourists, and movie productions all kept using Bombay, which created a bizarre situation where the city marketed itself with one name while officially going by another. That gap between official policy and popular usage produced a very expensive cost. Now, let's talk about Peking, or Beijing. Same city, different mess. For decades, the Western world knew China's capital as Peking. Then, in 1979, China officially adopted the Pinyin romanization system and told everyone that it was actually Beijing now. The problem, nobody was ready for this switch. Peking University, one of the most prestigious institutions in Asia, faced an absurd dilemma. Should they change their English name and risk losing decades of international recognition? They did not. They kept Peking University, which means there is a university in Beijing called Peking University. Can you blame them? Their reputation, alumni networks, and international partnerships were all built on that name. Changing it would have been academic suicide. The food industry went absolutely bonkers. Peking duck is one of the most famous Chinese dishes in the world, and restaurants everywhere had to decide whether to rebrand or stick with the familiar name. Most kept Peking duck because Beijing duck just does not have the same ring to it. And then there was diplomatic chaos. Embassies had to reprint everything. Many older treaties still reference Peking, and lawyers spent countless hours arguing whether those documents remain valid. The transition created a confusing mess where you never quite knew which name to use. But guess what happened next? The city that probably regrets its name change more than any other was Leningrad. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the city voted to change its name back to Saint Petersburg, which had been its original name before the Russian Revolution. On paper, this sounded like a return to historical roots, pride in the pre-Soviet heritage and all that. Except they did not think about the consequences. The biggest issue was that Leningrad was not just a city, it was a symbol. The siege of Leningrad during World War II is one of the most important events in Russian history. More than 1 million people died defending that city, and their sacrifice is forever tied to the name Leningrad. Veterans groups were furious. They felt the government was erasing their history and dishonoring the dead. The region around the city is still called Leningrad Oblast. The main train station is still Leningrad Station. There are streets named after Leningrad events, monuments to Leningrad heroes, and museums about the siege, all in a city now called Saint Petersburg. The cognitive dissonance is absolutely mental. And here is something nobody talks about: the economic impact. St. Petersburg had to rebuild its entire tourism brand from scratch. Some businesses lost out because tourists could not find them anymore. The city basically had to start over in terms of international recognition, costing them billions during the transition. Now, if you think those are bad, wait until you hear about Madras becoming Chennai. In 1996, the Indian state of Tamil Nadu officially renamed Madras to Chennai for reasons similar to Mumbai, to remove colonial influence and embrace the local language. But Madras was a powerhouse name in business. The Madras Stock Exchange, Madras University, and Madras High Court carried weight, history, and prestige. When the name changed, companies faced brutal choices. The Madras Cements Company stuck with Madras because changing would have meant rebranding across dozens of countries, redoing packaging and updating legal registrations everywhere. So now you have Madras Cements operating in Chennai. That makes zero sense to outsiders. The IIT Madras kept its name too. The airport code remained MAA, railway signage stayed for years, and people still use both names interchangeably. But here is where Chennai's situation gets even messier. The name change was politically motivated, pushed by regional parties wanting to assert Tamil identity. It alienated a significant portion of the population connected to the Madras brand, creating divisions that still cause political arguments decades later. And finally, Calcutta to Kolkata in 2001. Same country, same reasoning, same problems multiplied. Calcutta was not just any city. It was the former capital of British India, a major cultural hub, home to iconic national institutions. When the name changed, there was a ripple effect across the entire country. Legal professionals still reference Calcutta High Court judgments because that is what they are called in law books. The port of Calcutta handles millions of tons of cargo, and shipping companies worldwide still use Calcutta in their systems. What makes Kolkata unique is the cultural aspect. Calcutta was synonymous with the Bengali Renaissance, literature, art, and cinema. When you said Calcutta, people thought of cultural richness. Kolkata did not carry that immediate global recognition. The city spent years and millions in cultural diplomacy just to make sure the world knew Kolkata and Calcutta were the same place. And you know what is absolutely crazy? All 5 of these cities share the same core problem. They changed their names for political or cultural reasons without fully considering the practical, economic, and social consequences. They thought it would be a simple administrative change, but what they got was decades of confusion, billions in costs, divided populations, and an identity crisis that still has not been fully resolved. The residents are stuck using 2 names depending on context. The businesses cannot decide which name gives them better recognition. The tourists are confused, the government records are a nightmare, and the entire world is just unsure which name to use. Drop a comment if you think your city should change its name. See you next time.